Sweet. Hello everyone and welcome to the first edition. Hello everyone and welcome to the first edition of the Stonewood Key webinars. I'm joined today with my friend Dylan Thomas from Sixtus Mortgage Broking, and we're here today to talk to you about first home buyers. Thank you for coming, Dylan. Do you want to give everyone a little bit of a background on yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So, a bit of brief about myself. I've been in the finance industry for 8+ years, had a career in banking, specifically commercial banking, so we looked after everyone from large, M&A transactions right through to first home buyers, so really good exposure for me and love helping people out.
Awesome, well thanks for joining us. And so a bit of background on myself, my name's Max. I'm one of the managing directors of Stonewood Key. We've been in the industry for about over a year now, had about 3 years of property development experience before this. And yeah, we're loving what we're doing. We're building 186 units at the moment and trying to navigate our way through the market. So today I'm joined, as I said, by Dylan and have David, our sales manager, who will be joining us shortly. So I thought I'd start off with Dylan. So Dylan, we know that a lot of people, I guess, in our industry, we get stuck in a bit of an echo chamber, and everyone around us, you know, we're kind of used to a lot of these funky terms and some of the abbreviations that the banks use. But today we really want to explain to the first home buyers and people that might not understand the industry just some of the basics so that they can get an idea of how to buy a house, some of the tips and things like that. So I thought I'd start today with, it's very common knowledge that the banks are looking for low risk customers that show financial stability. Obviously they don't want to expose themselves too much with risky clients. So what do you think are some things that you can do to prep your finances before acquiring a mortgage?
Yeah, look, and I think that purely comes down to having good, fundamentally having good financial habits. So that's things like reducing, well, in this market, banks don't really look at consumer debt that favourably. So that's things like, I know there's things like Q cards and afterpays, etc. that can be great cash flow tools, but they aren't that viable from a service perspective, just because of the triple CFA.
And what is the triple CFA?
So the triple CFA is the Credit Contracts Consumer Finance Act,
yeah.
And that effectively just dictates, I guess, encompassing responsible lending on a high level, and it dictates as to what the banks can and can't do and what they have to prove. So
yeah.
The prudential around it is they do have to evidence and provide, the reporting entities that they're doing the right thing,
yeah.
and they're doing the right thing by the clients. So yeah, I guess that's what it is, plain and simply.
Awesome. So what do you think some of these things you could do before getting your mortgage in terms of your finance?
Look, reducing the amount of consumer debt that you have is definitely a good thing. And yeah, I guess just enabling good financial habits. You shouldn't have to drastically change too much about your circumstances when you're taking on a mortgage. You should be able to, again, working with the broker or your banker at hand, again, it's a commitment, and you should be well and truly educated by your banker or broker in terms of the commitment that you're taking on. But in terms of your financial habits, in my opinion, they shouldn't have to change drastically for you to take on a mortgage, especially if you're living well within your means.
Yeah, awesome. So a common mistake can be acquiring new debt before you get a mortgage, even if this is well in advance of your mortgage. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I think that leads back to the previous question, and again, just having good financial habits prior to maybe going through a pre-approval, and again, reducing the amount of consumer debt that you hold.
What kind of debt could that be?
We'll use credit card debt, for example. There's a ratio anywhere between sort of $1 and $7. So for every $1 of consumer debt that you have, say credit card, Q card, etc., that means that you may be losing out anywhere between $6 and $7 worth of a home loan.
Yeah.
So for perspective, again, $10,000 of credit card debt may equate to anywhere between sort of $60,000 to $70,000 worth of home lending. So again, it's not me saying to my clients, you have to reduce these to X amount. Do you have the ability to reduce that? Is this something that we can work through?
Yeah, awesome. So it says online that close to 28% of buyers last year in the market spent over their initial budget. What do you think some of the invisible costs of home ownership may be?
There's one thing that always comes to mind, and that's actually the moving costs.
Yeah.
A lot of people tend to forget, you actually have all the stuff and you've got to move it from A to B.
Yeah.
It does require time and funds,
yeah.
And also things like solicitor costs. But look, again, working with the right people, you can get things like cashbacks, which do soften the blow per se. And things like body corp rates, people just don't really think about when you're buying a property. And these are costs that do add up. But again, it's about an education process, and what I like to do is make all my clients very well educated as to what they're getting into.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you for that, Dill. I'll get David on now. So one key thing with buying a house, if a lot of that, sounds complicated and a little bit interesting, it's good to get a mortgage broker involved. They can help you through a lot of the complicated finance side of things. And it's always, good to, they're the experts on knowing how to get your mortgages and your finances, and great to get them involved. So now I'd like to invite David, my sales manager from Stonewood Key, on. He's in charge of all our sales, and welcome.
Hey
Thank
guys.
you. So David's been with us for about 6 months now, and we love having him on the team. I guess there's always the two sides of the purchase. So the first side is obviously getting a mortgage, getting your financing, and having the money to be able to do it.
Yeah.
But then the other side obviously is negotiating the deal and actually getting the contract signed.
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be great to get David on today, and he sees a lot of the people in the market. He's constantly dealing with buyers every day, making phone calls, doing open homes. And so I just thought it'd be good to ask you some questions.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
see where we can help these buyers out.
Yeah.
So obviously timing the market can be difficult, and it's known that there's never a right time to buy.
Yeah.
You're either at the top or the bottom. You never know. No one has the old crystal ball. So what would you say some of the difficulties were of purchasing last year when the market was up?
Yeah, so I think last year, because there sort of was a sense of fear of missing out, everyone sort of had the same idea, and therefore sort of prices inflated quite a bit. I recall last year when I used to do a lot of open homes and things, about 10 to 15 groups would go for the same unit.
Yeah.
To which your first home buyer would feel a bit pressured.
And do you think they got priced out of the market?
Yeah, definitely, and sort of lost a bit of confidence in themselves and actually purchasing something in Auckland.
So what would you say then? Because everyone sits there and goes, I missed the market last year, and the market's going a bit soft now, and there's negativity, especially in the first home buyers. What would you say to them about that? Because in my eyes, I think now's a great time to buy. I think, as a first home buyer, you can actually get deals. There's stock available.
Yep.
I mean, we had a development in Mount Albert last year. At the time, there were only 3 homes for sale in the Mount Albert area. So, purchasing something there was near impossible.
Yeah, I think with first home purchases, one of the biggest things that you can do to benefit yourself is definitely to do your own due diligence.
Yeah.
Do your own market research on whether that be on TradeMe or realestate.co.nz. Find comparables of homes that you like.
Yeah.
Especially in the locations that you like. I think with a first home buyer, obviously everyone wants the nice big 4-beddy double garage home,
Yeah.
but being a bit more realistic in location and price point can definitely help you eventually get there.
Yeah, well, the thing I always tell people, you can renovate a kitchen, you can change a bedroom, you can fix a bathroom, but you can't change the location.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think to answer, some people's doubts about the market right now, I believe that, if you buy good property in good locations, that's always going to be a great asset. It doesn't matter what the market, and good property is always desirable. And 100%. I think that's the thing, in markets like these, it's finding good assets as opposed to just buying something for the sake of buying.
Yeah.
So another question I have for you is, I always tell people when buying a home that they should conduct a must-have feature of the home, or, of the location or whatever it may be. What do you think some of the important things to consider are when buying a house?
So it all sort of would depend on your personal situation, whether you have a family, kids, or it's just yourself. For instance, I'll take a case study of a family. Let's say your children are 5 to 7 years old, about to get into intermediate school. You want to choose a location and a development that isn't obviously in school zoning.
Yeah.
To which, that's convenient for you, it's convenient for your kids, you're close by.
And on TradeMe, you can search property right, and it tells you the school zone.
And there's also websites out there where, there are services that actually provide the zoning for the schools. So you can just type your address in and it'll come up with 5, 6, 7 different options.
And do you know any of these websites? Or?
Yeah. So
homes.co.nz.
Yeah, homes.co.nz has one. Relab should show it as well.
Yeah, Relab's a great tool. We use that here in the office. It's probably a slightly higher level tool.
Yeah.
But for developers, it's an amazing tool. Shows you the services, everything.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to survive without that. So shout out to Relab. Awesome. Thank you for that, David. So I guess the next big question is, when buying a home, what are the benefits of coming directly, say, to a developer like Stonewood Key?
Yeah. So I think these days, when you are purchasing directly from the developer, obviously you have the reassurance that you're communicating directly with the people who are building it.
Yeah.
They're in control of the process from start to finish.
Yeah.
with us at Stonewood, we have in-house project managers, quantity surveyors, sales guys, everyone's in-house to look after you from start to finish. So therefore, when you do purchase direct from a developer, you do get those benefits of being looked after. Let's say if you are purchasing off the plans, and you have a direct communication portal through the whole process.
And so I guess this is what I found hard coming into the industry was when looking at a plan, it's really hard to visualize, what that's going to look like in the future or how the product's going to turn out. So say you're a first home buyer, you've never bought a house, you don't understand new goods very well. What would you be looking for in the plan? Like what is it indoor outdoor flow? Is it having a big living space? Like what do you think are key things that people should be on the look for in a plan?
Yeah, so based on your sort of situation of living with your family or yourself, I would sort of most definitely look at the plan and say, hey, can I see myself living in this structure? Whether that be all the bedrooms are upstairs or one bedroom downstairs. That's the sort of things I'll be looking at it. As well as I'd sort of be looking at the layout of where things are. Where the bathroom is, where the bedroom is, where the garage is.
And I think a big thing that a lot of developers miss is storage. I think storage is super important. That's something you need to look out for, and that can sometimes be hidden a little bit, I think, in the plan. So it's always a little thing to look out for, guys. Sweet. Well, thank you so much for that, David. I'm going to get Dylan back on just to talk through mortgages, and we'll get David back on soon. Sweet. Well, welcome back, big fella. Yeah. So we've gone through effectively, what someone should do before getting a mortgage. We talked through, what they should do with their debt or the levels of spending. And David's just covered, some of the key features of buying a home and what they should look for in the purchase. So I guess let's get into some of the more nitty-gritty stuff. So at the moment, we're seeing a lot of changes with the OCR, which is the official cash rate. And to your average person, you might be wondering, I hear all these terms like interest rates and OCR. I think people get very, I get a little bit confused about that myself at the start. And I guess, what does the interest rates going up mean? So say if you were to explain to someone that doesn't understand this, how would you kind of explain it in layman's terms? So say last year when everyone's going on, interest rates are low and now they're going up. What does that mean to the average home? How would that impact me if I had a mortgage?
Sure. Fundamentally, it purely comes down to, test rates are the key aspect of this. So, to provide some perspective, test rates in the 2020s were around the 6.5%.
And what is test rate then?
So this is the rate at which the banks stress test debt.
Yeah.
So this means that, God forbid, if rates were to increase by another 2%, that all their clients can still afford to absorb that increase. Yeah,
so basically, in like a real basic way of saying it, it's basically like, say that you were making $100 a year and say that you were paying back $70 of debt. What they will do is they'll check that if your debt went up to say $90, can you still pay back the 100?
It's effectively just like a buffer.
It's just a buffer.
The goal is not to set people up to fail. So they want to ensure that, yes, they can absorb any sort of interest rate hike, and that it's normally based off the floating rate as well.
Yeah.
So again,
And so that's my next question. What is the difference between a fixed and a floating mortgage?
Sure. And again, this purely is circumstantial. So everyone has different needs and wants. And to put it simply, floating rate means that you can, or the debt is subject to change.
Yeah.
And it means that you can repay in advance without any costs.
Yeah.
A fixed rate is a fixed period of time where the rate is locked. So whether that's 1 or 2 or 3 years. Again, it provides certainty.
Certainty, yeah. So what kind of person would suit a fixed mortgage?
People that want a budget.
Yeah.
So it's an effective budgeting tool because you allow yourself, or you know what your monthly repayments or fortnightly repayments are going to be, because it's fixed in for a certain amount of time.
Well, that's what I think's great about it, is as you said, if you're budgeting, and especially as a first home buyer, you might be in one of your earlier jobs, you might be a little bit cash strapped, and so it's a great tool to know, hey, I've got to pay back X amount a week, and you just know going forward that you just stick to that. Whereas I think with the floating, obviously, it might be changing every 6 months, might be changing every year, and you're fully at the discretion of the OCR and what the banks choose to do. So, I personally, as a first home buyer, I think it's a great tool to use the fixed. It just gives you a little bit of it just kind of gets rid of some of that uncertainty.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, again, everyone's circumstances are different. So whether you fix the majority of it and have a small loan, which you're just aggressively repaying to try and reduce that overall interest cost, again, there's structures out there which your advisor, sometimes your banker, but look, an advisor can provide you guys advice, and they can sort of structure the debt in a way where it works for you. So whether that means having, a $20,000 that's floating and that you can just really aggressively repay and reduce your interest cost and smash back that mortgage, that can work really well for some people.
Yeah.
And for some people, they just want to have that certainty. They want to have that certainty over, say, a 3-year period for all their debt.
Yeah.
And look, that works perfectly for them.
Awesome. So another thing that comes across our desk a lot is, have you got your pre-approval? And so I guess, Dylan, what is a pre-approval letter from the bank, and why is this important to have?
Sure. So it effectively provides, I guess, my clients or a client a gauge as to how much they can afford. So it's more
Afford to borrow.
Afford to borrow, correct.
Yeah.
And generally these last anywhere between 60 and 90 days. And again, they provide a roof.
Yeah.
How I effectively look at it is that's the roof. Try shoot over it if you can, but it's there if you need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. And do you think this is a must-have to have?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I guess no matter what your circumstances are, whether you're looking to buy in a year's time, it can give you a good gauge as to maybe where you're currently sitting.
Yeah.
And it's a snapshot in time.
Yeah.
So where you may sit now in a year's time, and again, it's only valid for 60 or 90 days, will maybe be very different from a year's time, and it could be a positive or negative thing.
Yeah.
So again, it's a useful tool to use.
And so how do you actually get this pre-approval? Let's say I'm looking at one of the Stonewood Key homes, I want to buy one.
Yeah.
How do I just turn up to the bank, or what statements do I need?
Again, I'm probably slightly biased because I'm a mortgage broker, but I mean, if you have a really good broker, which there are plenty of, you can approach a broker directly, and they can work you through that whole process. They effectively try and make it as painless as possible if you've got a good one.
Yeah.
Also, you can approach the bank directly as well. Again, the fundamental difference is the broker can provide advice and the banks can't.
Yeah.
Not that that's a bad thing, but
Yeah. Awesome. And so I guess my final question to you for now is, what do you think the benefits of buying a new build home to, say, an existing house, especially as a first home buyer? What's the benefits of that?
yeah, I guess having clients that have bought both. I guess with an existing property, the best way to say it is you've just got to be calculated in terms of what you're looking to take on. It's smart to get a building report.
Yeah.
Because it may be a bit of a TLC, it might need a paint, or the sink might need replacing, the oven might need replacing. So with a new build, I guess you've got that more or less. You've got the 10 years builder's guarantee, and you've also got uncertainty that you're buying a really good quality finished product.
Yeah.
Whereas buying an existing property, maybe you can add a bit of value to it. Whereas with the new build, you've effectively got everything in place already.
Yeah. And once again, I keep labouring this on, but this is for the first home buyers out there. How do you even get a building report? Like, say I don't know a builder, I'm fresh to town, and I just have no idea how to do this. What would the steps be for that?
Well, look, I mean, I've used one in particular that has been amazing, and they've provided my clients with some fantastic sort of knowledge, and maybe with their experience as well. They're able to identify things that potentially may need a bit of love or a bit of money thrown at them. So, look, I mean, it's more or less, if you've got a builder that can provide these services to you already that you know and trust, again, it's a big thing is trust, right?
Trust.
And obviously having that experience as well. If you know someone that fits the role, or it's having, I guess, someone that's been through the process like myself.
Yeah.
We had 2 bills reports on our property when we bought.
Yeah.
Just to be safe. Probably not the standard practice, but yeah, peace of mind is what it provides. And again, it's who you want to work with and who you trust.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for that, Dylan. I'm going to get David back on to answer a few more questions. Welcome back.
Good to see you again.
Sweet, guys. Now, just remember, if there's any questions you want to ask us, feel free to post them in the chat. We'll try and answer as many of those as we can. And this is also going to be the first installment. Obviously, there's a few teething issues on this one, but we will, going forward, we're going to be doing a lot of these. David and I and Dylan are going to be going around the country earlier in the year.
Yeah.
And we're going to be doing some road shows for first home buyers and talking through our products and, just general market stuff. So any questions or anything you guys want to discuss, even after webinar, feel free to shoot us a DM. All of our Instagrams are Stonewood Key. We're always here to help. David can always answer some questions for first home buyers. And even if it's not for our product, we're here to help. We want people to get into their homes, and we understand the importance of buying a property. So, David, I guess when going through an open home,
Yes.
a very important thing that we do is the home inspection.
Yeah.
So what I always recommend to people buying homes is that they should bring a professional with them, like a builder. And what do you think the benefits of doing this are? Like, say we've got our open home, and I call my mate Jim up, and I'm like, can you come through? Why should I do that as a first home buyer?
So essentially, I think the sort of difference with someone who's been in the construction industry or is quite well aware of, the construction process, when you do take them with you to the open home, they can sort of point out potential defects or areas that might need working on, or something that you wouldn't have noticed to an untrained eye.
Yeah.
And so I think overgoing yourself and purely relying on your eye, it's always good to have that support system with you as well.
I think as well, obviously buying your home is going to be the biggest purchase you probably make, especially as a first home buyer.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like, to me, it gives me that peace of mind, and it gives that second person's opinion, and that's something that I really love about it.
Yeah.
So then I guess the next question is, obviously at the moment it's a bit more easy, because we're in a buyer's market and it suits the buyers, there's a lot more stock, but there's obviously been times in the cycle, and there will be times to come, where the market's a bit more hot and it's harder to get an offer done. What are the kinds of things people can do to make their offer to the vendor look more attractive?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest thing is when you do, meet an agent for say, bringing comparable data almost with you to the viewing is quite a good option, so that, on a similar square meter, similar sort of configuration, similar area, if you bring a range of 3 to 5 different options, it sort of gives you a bit more backing power in negotiating.
Yeah.
And especially right now in this market, because it is a buyer's market, buyers are more favourable in negotiating terms that suit them over the actual seller.
Yeah.
Last year before, the seller was sort of doing it on their side.
Yeah.
However, this is a great opportunity for you to just bring as much data as possible with you to sort of use it as leverage to get the best deal that you can for yourself.
Yeah. And so I think that comes back to what we were talking about before, where to get the best deal, you've got to work out, because obviously, especially as a first home buyer, you're not going to Paratai Drive and buying the $25 million house. So there's always going to be sacrifice in whatever you do, and I think that's what we're talking about with the must-have chat. Yeah,
and I think as well, with your first home purchase, when you are sort of, realizing your true finance cost and purchasing power, if it isn't the perfect home that you want, you still want to sort of use that property as a stepping stone to eventually get to the property that you dream of.
Exactly.
But getting on the ladder and building that equity over time is definitely a great sort of tool to use.
100%, and that's what I was talking about before, where there's just no right time to buy property. I mean, the last 3 years, a lot of people come up to me and go, "Oh, you're so lucky, you've been a developer, you must have made so much money, it must have been so easy." But I was saying to my team earlier today, I walked out of every auction and every property I bought over the last 3 years, and I've sat there and gone, "Oh my God, I've paid too much, like what have I done, like the market's going to bottom out," and I've just, gone unconditional on this thing.
I mean, look, the thing with property is it's one of the top asset classes in New Zealand.
Especially,
especially in New Zealand. It's a long-term game.
Yeah.
And I think that's how people sort of need to perceive it, especially if they're dipping their toes in for the first time. They want to be thinking 10, 15 years down the line.
Yeah, well, there's some interesting data I got here. So, in the past 18 months, the property market rose 45.6% from May 2020, to November 2021. And over the last 30 years in New Zealand, house prices rose an average of 7.2%. And that was from January 1992 to May 2022. So, even if we saw, it says here in the REINZ house price index, in the last 6 to 7 months, house prices have fallen 7.7%. But if you look at that on average, people are still up massively.
From a historical 10-year point of view.
Totally. And I think that's the thing is, I think in the last couple of years, people got, accustomed to that idea, I'm going to buy a house in November, I'm going to flick it in February, and I might make 50 grand. But personally, it's not an asset class you want to be doing that all the time, because as I talked about with Dylan, there's hidden costs.
Yes.
You've got the agent cost, you've got the moving cost, there's a ton of hidden things that, you might not see on your initial feasibility, but it starts adding up. And the risk you run is if you over leverage yourself, say like a lot of people did at the end of last year, the risk you run is if you can't pay your debt back, you have to sell. And the only risk you have in property is if you can't meet your interest payments. Yeah. Because if you can manage your debt, there's no real risk. You can just ride out any storm. The market's always going to bounce back. It's inflation driven. So I think that is a massive thing, is that
absolutely.
You don't expose yourself. And I think that's the thing as a first home buyer. You want to be sitting there thinking, I want to own this, say, for 5-10 years. Where do I see the market in that time? Not on 6 months, what am I going to get for it?
Yeah, not sort of going, hey, I've read this on the news, so I'm going to wait 3 months and then get in. You know, that's just not really how the market works at all.
Totally.
And everyone has a different opinion on how the market is. So listening to one source of, you know, media or thing isn't the best option for a first home buyer.
Totally.
And I think overall, doing your own research, talking to multiple professionals,
multiple people,
not just one person that's a family friend, but multiple people from different areas, and then sort of, you know, concluding on your own,
totally.
Hey, I should maybe go this route, is the best thing to do at the moment.
Well, it's like the developers. I mean, I could talk to all my competitors and we're all going to have a different way that we find land and we do business.
Yeah.
You know, all of us look for different things, we want different price points, everything. But I guarantee the one thing we would all agree on is location.
Yeah.
You know, it might not mean we all want the best location. You know, I don't build in Ponsonby, for example. But there's still the best street in the worst suburb. You know, you can always find the gold in anything. You know, there's always the cream at the top. And that's the thing is, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to buy the most expensive thing or the most expensive street or the best area. But say, for example, we bought stuff in Mount Albert recently. You know, and I see in 10 years, you know, we've got CRL coming in, you know, the city's moving out, that's still pretty close. And I thought that was a pretty good buy 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, so there's plenty of places like that you want to be looking, and you know, I don't think you want to go, oh, this place is hot right now, let's buy it, because you know, you're probably paying a surplus for it.
I think a good tip as well is sort of researching areas that you know that money will be injected into.
Totally.
So an example that I can sort of mention is, you know, yes, Albany is on that high end sort of price ticket, but there are those cheaper options. And for example, you know, areas like that where they are investing, you know, a few $100 million into the future will have a good growth.
Totally.
From their, you know, infrastructure is something that you should consider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you think about, you know, in a development, what do you think it matters what unit you buy? Like say, because obviously the front and back units, usually in terrace apartments are the best. You know, usually more windows, slightly more ground floor area. What do you think? Say I'm sitting here and I go, oh, but David, I've only got $700,000 that I can use to buy, you know, you know, a $700,000 home. I can only afford the middle unit.
Yep.
What would you say to that kind of person?
I think for that kind of person, I would sort of go, hey, look, this is your first property ever. Obviously, everyone wants the best. That's every single. That's the same for everyone across the board. Everyone wants that top unit. However, you know, for a first-home buyer, if your approval can only meet that middle unit, which is still a great unit, you know, I would value that I'm paying my own mortgage and building my own equity over continuing to wait and pay someone else's mortgage through renting.
Totally.
You know,
and that's where New Zealand's quite interesting. Around the world, you know, if you go to somewhere like Germany, for example, it's almost all renting.
Yeah.
No one owns property.
That's right.
New Zealand and Australia has, you know, it's almost built into us. They get told, you go to school, go buy your first home. You know, it's the Kiwi dream. And so, personally, I've always been under the impression you should buy your own home, because why pay rent to someone else, you know, when you can be paying off your mortgage? I just think the key is don't overexpose yourself, especially on your first home. And I think the good thing for our generation is, you know, people might have got caught in the last year, and as they say, you never know who's swimming naked till the tide goes out. Dylan loves that one. But I think that's the big thing, is I think our generation now, we're going to know, you know, we saw the cheapest money that, you know, I don't even know if interest rates could ever go that low. You know, they were talking negative interest rates at one point. You know, and I think everyone in our generation was sitting there going, oh my God, money's basically free. And all these people dived into homes, and there's a very real chance in the next 6 months people get a bit caught out. And I think it's going to be great lessons for people our age. You know, you've always got to be thinking about tomorrow. And that's how we like to run our business. Like, yeah, you've got to make hay while the sun's shining, but at the same time, you've always got to be ready for tomorrow, because who knows what could happen, you know. Rangitoto could blow up, you know, like anything could happen. And so I think that's a big thing. And as David said, you know, you want to be looking for the next areas, you know, you want to be buying something that you can afford.
You know, just making that short-term sacrifice, of whether that be a bit of a further commute from work, or, you know, whether that's not as central as you like, just making that sacrifice for a few years of your life will definitely help pay off in the, you know, remaining 10, 20 years for the rest of your life, because you have that asset base.
Totally.
And you have that equity that you've leveraged.
And that's why, again, I keep referring back to it, but that must-have list is so important. You know, because if you say, I need to commute to work, so I need either a car park, or I need, you know, public transport, or, You know, whereas if you go buy somewhere in the middle of nowhere just because you're like, oh, I can afford this, and you know you're not in school zones and you can't do anything. Well, is that the right property? You better to wait 6 months.
Yeah.
I just think the two big things: you should never rush into property, and you should never, you just don't want to overexpose yourself. I think those are the two keys. Because if you can live to fight another day, you know, and then the final thing I'd say is, as we said, there's no crystal ball. There's never a right time, and we always say that the right time is now. You know, if you look at last year or the year before, sure, you might have had big CV growth, but it was impossible to buy land. We'd go to auctions. It was so hard. You know, and you know the banks. It was tough.
Because you know, day to day, I deal with a lot of customers, and they always will say to me at the end of the viewing, "Hey, David, like, should I buy now?"
Yeah.
And I always say the same thing. And I go, "Hey, look, no one can tell. You know, whether you bought 2 years ago, 5 years ago, this year." Property is a long game once again.
Totally.
It's a market cycle. Any time that you sort of think, well, this isn't the right time, is probably the best time to sort of just jump in and, you know, try and make financing work.
Well,
try to find something.
Yeah, a great example of that is I bought my first property and my first development at level 4 of the first COVID. And I got called by all my friends, my family, and they were going, "You have lost your bloody mind, mate." And I was sitting there for a bit going, maybe I had. You know, we're going into a global pandemic. We've never had a lockdown like this before. You know, and in hindsight, that was the best buy ever made. You know, from there, everything's gone absolutely nuts. But at the time, I was sitting there thinking I'd lost my mind. Well, I had, and everyone else thought I had. But I think that's the point is, you know, everyone would sit there now and go, "Oh, that was so smart buying then." But it didn't feel right then. There's never a right time. You know, if I was to buy something tomorrow, I'd be like, "Oh, maybe I should have waited because it might come off more." But the market could bounce back tomorrow. You never actually know what's going to happen.
Like, and the thing I always say to them is, "Hey, look, you know, if the client does have an approval from the bank that's all ready to go, and they're still on edge, waiting, I would always say to them, you know, would you keep waiting and keep paying the rent, or would you jump into something that's, you know, maybe not your dream home, take a sacrifice hit on that for a few years, and then, you know, refinance, restructure, and see if, you know, you want to jump into something better with that equity once, you know, things stabilize and things calm down a bit."
Totally. And I asked Dylan this, but what are your thoughts on why would you buy a new built home over an existing home?
Yeah, so personally, and you know, not even being biased here, I just personally would go for a new build because, you know, that's my personal preference. You know, I sort of value the 10-year masterboard guarantee.
And what is a 10-year masterboard?
So not every developer includes or has a 10-year masterboard guarantee. Stonewood Key does, and essentially what it is it's a 10-year sort of reassurance that, you know, in terms of structural integrity of the home, so the structure, you're covered on that end from master build. Also, it will sort of ensure that you don't run the risk of losing your deposit as well, which is a big thing. Obviously, you know, you guys might have read in the media, there's a bunch of horror stories of people losing their money to developers and things like that. So
one final question, just in case people don't know, what actually is the deposit? What does that mean, and how much is it for a new build?
So for off-the-plan sales, usually for our homes and new builds in general, it's a 10% minimum deposit. So deposit will either come from your KiwiSaver, your cash savings, things like that.
And what does the deposit mean? So say I'm buying a $1 million house. So talk me through it.
So let's say you're buying a $1 million house. Your deposit would be $100,000. Now let's say the house isn't built yet and you're purely buying off the plan and it will be built in 12 months time. That deposit, once you pay it, will secure the home at a fixed price that you've agreed with the developer. So
and when do you pay that deposit?
So you pay that deposit when you go unconditional. So with the SPA contract.
And what's SPA?
So sale and purchase agreement, which is the binding document to purchase a home. When you sign an SPA, the standard time that you're given is usually 10 working days. So in that 10 working days, you can talk to your bank, your friends, your lawyer, and make a final decision on whether this is the best fit for you. The benefit with going on a conditional agreement, which is an offer essentially that you hold for 2 weeks.
So you have a condition, say you might go, I'm signing this conditional upon finance, or I'm signing this conditional upon due diligence. It's basically a safety net for you to go, hey, I want to lock this property in, no one else can buy it for now, but give me 10 days to work out, can I get the money for it? You know, and even just have a second thought.
So it's essentially a reservation for the unit that you don't pay $1 for, but it gets taken off the market, so let's say someone else wants to buy it, they need to wait for you until you make your decision. So usually the process is, you get 2 weeks, talk to your friends, family, bank once again.
Yeah.
And then after that 2 weeks, if you're happy with everything and all the conditions have been met, then your deposit would be due and paid for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where does that sit generally?
So generally that deposit will sit in a lawyer's trust account. So usually when signing contracts, the lawyer from your end, who represents yourself as a buyer, and
Yeah.
the lawyer from the seller's end will communicate over the contract,
Yeah.
and it will sit in the lawyer's trust account. So therefore you know it's safe and it can't be reached or pulled out at any time.
Yeah, or used.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's the big thing is generally as a general rule, the deposit's probably 50% of the people's money.
Yeah.
It's probably 50% of the
That's
equity.
right.
And so that's why, as I'm trying to say, property is just something you don't want to rush into. It's not like crypto where everyone goes, oh my god, go buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's not a
You
get
know,
rich scheme.
Nah,
Yeah.
it's definitely, that's why you want to be thinking location. That's why there's a TV show on it.
Yeah.
You want to take your time, you want to talk to your friends about it, your parents, any trusted people, you want to get in touch with a mortgage broker like Dylan, and use your agent. Your agent's your best tool. I mean, they're going to help you out. They're all generally pretty honest. But in all seriousness, they want to help you out. If you ask them all the questions, use them as a bouncing board, as a diving board, just to get any ideas.
Yeah, and touching off Max's point, I think that's why going off, purchasing directly from the developer is quite good because they know the development inside out.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do purchase for, say, another external agent on the development, they might not know the further details that, for, say, someone would directly from the company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, David.
Yeah, no worries.
Cheers for that. So now we're going to answer some of your guys' live questions. If you've got any more you want to ask, flick them through now. Let's get into it. All right, so we'll start with Olivia Farrelly. Thank you so much for the question and thank you for tuning in. So what is the average deposit rate for a first home buyer?
Look, let's not use averages because it depends on each person's or couples or whatever it be. It depends on their circumstances. But look, as a rule of thumb, I would say 10% should be the minimum.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, Daniel has asked, what will the OCR peak at?
It's the $1 million question.
It's
at
a
the
$1 million
moment.
question.
Yeah.
Daniel, if we knew that, I'd be a very rich man.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit of crystal ball gazing, but look, I would definitely recommend reading economist reports.
Totally. Tony Alexander's great to check out.
Tony Alexander, Sharon Dolner as well from ANZ is really good.
Yeah.
But look, again, without predicting too much of the future, but look, is it going to be 5 maybe? Will it be higher? Who knows?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of speculation it might go up another 75 points. Next increase next week. Right?
23rd of November.
23rd.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess the big thing is, you kind of want to assume the worst at all times, I believe. You don't want to sit there and go, oh, maybe it'll go back to 4, so if I leverage the shit out of this, I'll be fine. I think you want to think, oh, what if it goes to 7? It's like the test rate.
Correct.
I think you want to think like the bank. They're not doing it to get you out of a home. They're not doing it because they don't want to lend. Their entire business is based off lending. They want to lend.
Correct.
So, yeah, I think that's a great thing to think about. Aaliyah Waya, is the deposit percentage different if you buy a new build to an existing home, or does it just depend on the bank?
Yes. So I guess it comes down to, they call it an RBNZ exemption. So they're effectively exempt from the LVR guidelines because they're a new build. So that means that they have a preference. Banks have a preference to look after their existing client base.
Yeah.
That means if you're buying a new build, you could potentially go to another bank that you don't bank with.
Yeah.
However, there are certain instances where retaining the relationship with your current bank may, improve your chances of getting a deal across the line. So, look, in short, a new build does provide more options in terms of maybe who you end up partnering with as your bank.
Yeah. So another good question here is from Daniel TBO. Will Auckland expand upwards or outwards more?
It's probably a better question for you, but
Yeah, I think that's a complicated one, Daniel. I think a bit of both. There's, as a developer, say myself, I'll never build over 3 levels. Once you get over 3 levels, you get into fire rating risk. You got to get elevators generally. Yeah, the fireproofing goes nuts. There's so much more compliance. The foundations have to be way stronger. Just as a general rule, it's way, way, way riskier, and it's not something that people like myself like to touch. I want to be in and out of things that I can be confident I can get through council, that I can deliver on time and deliver to cost. Obviously, there's guys out there like Manson's that build great products and they build big stuff, and one day I hope to be as great as them. But I just think a lot of people see that as too risky. But at the same time, I don't see, Auckland can't go out too much more. Geographically, it's nearly the size of LA. If you were to drive from Pukekohe to, say, Albany, that would take you, 2 sort of hours? The city's massive. So I don't necessarily think we go more out or more up, but I think we go more condensed. I think people like myself come in, there's the possible RMA changes, where you might get a single house that can be turned into 3-4 units. I just see more of that happening as opposed to, these skyscrapers being built. I think, there's a lot of conditions in there, say around the museum, there's that triangle where you can't build above, so you can't block it out. So I think a lot of those things, affect that. So we'll answer one more question. What's the next one? Here we go. So this is from Aaliyah. What is the best way to navigate having a good deposit, say 30%, but bad credit?
Cool. Look, it just takes effort and time, right? So, everyone may have a colourful financial past, is probably maybe a way to put it. Some people may be better, some people may be worse. But I think actually being honest and talking to your banker or broker around maybe the potential shortfalls that you've had in the past, how you've potentially rectified it. Look, common examples I see is Baycorp.
Yeah.
Suing people for parking tickets or speeding tickets, right? And look, if you've obviously, it's easy to match up things like that, right? Because you can match up, yes, they had the money to pay for it, it got sent to the wrong delivery address.
Yeah.
Very easy to quantify and explain, does have an adverse impact on your credit history.
Totally.
Not paying a power bill. Yeah. These things all appear, and it's really good to have these conversations up front as opposed to finding them out in hindsight.
Yeah.
Again, not the end of the world, but I think being able to rationalise and explain these things and showing that your behaviours or your financial behaviour has improved or changed for the better can effectively help maybe to get things across the line and to maybe paint a picture that you're not this financially terrible person.
Yeah, totally. Sweet. Well, thank you, Dylan.
Thank you very much.
Cheers to that, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys for tuning in.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, guys, just want to say a massive thank you all for tuning in. This is the first of many to come. As I said, Dylan, myself, and David are going to be touring around the country at the start of next year. We're going to be talking to first-home buyers. We're going to talk to investors. Just about everything. We'll have a more condensed version of this. We'll do some live Q&As. And as I said, we just want to help you guys. If you ever need mortgage broking needs, come to Sixtus and Dylan. I trust the man with my life, so he can definitely help you with your mortgages. And for all building things, Stonewood Key is always here to help. If you have any property related questions, we're more than keen to get in touch and help you guys where we can. And yeah, I think, if any of these tips helped you guys, we hope that you guys can get on the ladder soon. And as we said, there's no right time to buy, but just take your time, think it out, do it logically, and don't rush into it. Just remember, good location. So guys, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.